Here we go with episode number 395 of the Genuine ScLoHo Media and Marketing Podcast. I'm Scott Howard, also known by my friends and family as ScLoHo, which is a mashup of my first, middle, and last names. This podcast has been a weekly creation since 2017, and I like to keep it short. Nearly every episode is less than 10 minutes long. This is the audio reading of an article that you can find at my website, scotthoward.me. Altogether, I published over 1,600 articles, and this one is titled, WOWO Still the Most Listened to Fort Wayne Radio Station for GrownUps. And even though I'm recording this at the Federated Media Studios in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I work for WOWO Radio, and this is being promoted by my employer, everything that I say or write is strictly my own thoughts and not necessarily the opinions of Federated Media or any of their affiliations and or advertisers. Well, a few weeks ago, radio stations in Fort Wayne, Indiana received access to the latest rating survey conducted by Nielsen for our market, which is ranked 111th largest in the United States. This is the most acceptable measurement of radio station listenership, and without going into all of the details today, I'm just going to jump into the numbers and what they mean. Some radio stations and a lot of advertising agencies use ratings to set their ad prices and or determine if their programming is doing its job to attract and retain listeners. The way that radio stations work financially is that we sell advertising to businesses and organizations that want to invite our listeners to become their customers, clients, or supporters. So this Nielsen rating is the scorecard that gives us some insight into each radio station's listenership, which helps us in the advertising side determine where a good place to run ads might be based on matching up what we know about our listeners and the customers wanted by a business. Fort Wayne, Indiana currently has 3 main radio station companies that own and operate the most listened to radio stations. These companies are Federated Media, Adams, and Sarkis-Tarzian. Together, they own 15 of the 19 stations that appear in the latest ratings. There are 19 counties in the total survey area, and because my primary radio station, WOWO, has listeners in all of those counties and beyond, when I look at this data, I look at the TSA, total survey area numbers, because we have listeners 24/7. I also use the 24/7 estimates too. Now, Fort Wayne is surveyed twice a year, and we get the results a few weeks after a rating period ends. It's not a free service. Those stations in the survey pay thousands of dollars for access to this information, and quite frankly, there are a few stations that don't pay, and so they don't have access to this. Now, focusing on those 15 stations, 4 of the top 5 are owned by Federated Media. They include WMEE, 98.9 The Bear, K105, and WOWO. The weekly audience for 24/7 total survey area people ages 12 and older ranges from 80,000 to more than 120,000 listeners every single week. This is the total number of people listening to each of those radio stations in our area that are ages 12 and older, according to Nielsen. The other 10 stations have anywhere from less than 20,000 up to 70,000 weekly listeners, according to the data. But here's where I dig deeper to help my business friends out, and that is to look at a smaller segment of the listenership. Businesses that advertise want to see a return on their investment, and most of the real money is not being spent by teenagers. When I tell my laptop to rerun the numbers and start with people ages 21 and older instead of 12 and older, WOWO now has the second largest audience right behind our sister station, WMEE. However, when you are in your 20s, and that's a transition time, we go from our youth to adulthood, and it's not until our mid-30s at the earliest that most of us really start having some real money to spend on our homes, our cars, our kids, and everything else that happens when you become a grown-up. So let me make one more adjustment and now look at how the Fort Wayne radio stations stack up using the age of 35 plus in that demographic. Using the 35 plus demographic, WOWO sits at the top with nearly 70,000 grown-ups listening every week. Second on the list is our sister station 98.9 The Bear with nearly 50,000 rock music fans. And like I said at the beginning, I use this information as a confirmation that we have the listeners that your business probably wants to invite. And if you'd like more information or details, just reach out to me. If you need any ideas or help, let's talk. If you have any questions at all about advertising or marketing that you don't know who to ask, you can ask me. Email me, scott@WOWO.com. That's scott@WOWO.com.
Podcasts by Federated Media.